Let's talk sanctions against PDVSA. Do you not think it's a sort of oil embargo against the country, and how will you manage it?
If we're talking about an oil embargo against Venezuela, Venezuela invested $300 billion in its oil industry over the past 10 years. We went from 3.5 million barrels a day to 1 million barrels a day. That's an embargo in itself. We indebted the country. In fact, our Minister for the Treasury said so, that there is proof of this. We have proof of $1.2 billion in bribes, just in bribes alone. So this is all money that we have lost. So what did we do? What did we do within the parliament? We called for Venezuelan assets to be shored up. We had proof that these assets had been stolen, had disappeared. A curious fact, there are 3 other countries in the world that invested more in the oil industries than us: US, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. And they have 10 million barrels a day in production. We, however, went from 3.5 to 1 million barrels a day. And yet we're the 4th largest investor in oil, so you don't need to be a genius in accounting to see that this money was stolen. So the first thing that we did was we called on all Venezuelan assets to be shored up so that theft would be stopped, so that we can invest that money in food, severely lacking food, in medication, in social security, in social justice, and all of this for our citizens. To get out of the current emergency crisis that we're going through, we have 3.5 million Venezuelans who have emigrated out of the country. We have the highest level of inflation in the world. We have 2 million% inflation at the moment and 53% deflation in terms of GDP. So if you add all of that up, 2.2 million% in inflation, 53% decline in GDP, well then, obviously, our country's a powder keg.
The military obviously supports Maduro's government. His defense minister said it again today. You extended the amnesty law to the military, but do you have another plan to gain their support? Do you think there's a way to win them over?
The first thing to do is have open dialogue with them. It's an unheard of thing to do. We are going to speak very clearly to the Venezuelan military. That's the first thing we have to do. Have open dialogue, effective dialogue with them, to remind them of the role that they play in our society, in building democracy, in rebuilding our country, ensuring a transition government. They need to understand this perfectly clearly. Then there are incentives and deterrents. For example, for the special forces, the FAES. These are people who killed young people in the street. They aren't allowed to benefit from amnesty. Here I'm talking about minors. 700 young people who were arrested in the street last week. They were at a rally, a peaceful rally for dialogue, peace, reconciliation. It's something that's unheard of in our country and in the entire world. So the armed forces need to be encouraged. They need to be encouraged if we want them to protect the Constitution, to help shore up the nation's assets, so that we can fulfill our mandate and ensure a transition.
Now, would you consider applying the amnesty law to political leaders such as Nicolas Maduro, Delcy Rodriguez, Diosdado Cabello?
Listen, this is something that I've done for a number of times already. First of all, you can't do this by decree. You have to build capacity, you have to ensure democracy, you have to put in certain guarantees in place, and then you can bring the country towards true democracy. This is what happened in Poland, Chile, and in Venezuela in 1958, just to give you a few examples. So all civil servants, be they military or otherwise, anyone who defends our constitution and ensures a democratic transition in our country, to ensure that we can hold free elections, they will have amnesty.
Nicolas Maduro and many South American leaders are speaking out against the interference in Venezuela as a U.S.-led coup. Who do you think's behind it all?
Listen, this is 20 years that we've heard the same thing time and time again. It's a classic tactic of regimes where they talk about enemies from the past, enemies from within, and enemies from without. We used to blame everything on what we call the Fourth Republic. But the previous regime for Maduro was that of Chavez, and for Chavez it was the one before them again. So there really is no such thing as the enemy from the past. In our current case, it would be the National Parliament. But it really isn't an enemy because we have such huge support from the people in the streets who voted for us. We have the Constitution. We have legal grounds in Article 233 of the Constitution, by virtue of which me, as acting president, can call free elections in the country. Now, moving on to the second point about enemy from without, foreign enemies. But that, again, is not true because we have Trump, May, Macron, Pinera, Duque, Sanchez, Calderón, and Lenin. Lenin, who was on the left. So there really is no left-right divide. There's no such divide in play here. And yet the left of the world, they were trying to say that there is this divide, but there isn't. This is completely unheard of in the history of the region. We have children dying in the street where hospitals have no electricity because the power plant is down. So all in all, these people, they need me. And there are a number of things that have to be done. First of all, it is a civil duty. It is a civic duty. We could talk about the civil service. We have to protect the Constitution. We are facing a dictatorship that arrested people, persecuted people, killed people. And we have to ensure a democracy in Venezuela.
When it's time to call for elections, as the opposition says, will you run? Will the opposition be ready for elections in the short term? Is the opposition coming together?
One of the most important things at play here is at the moment, it's like back in 2015, is that the opposition is unified. It's like a coalition. We are strong, working together. And this is what helped us so much over the past 28 days. When we want to put an end to these people holding on to power, when we want to ensure a transition, when we want to ensure humanitarian stability in the country, legal, institutional stability in our country, when we want to ensure free elections can be held, there has to be a vote. People have to be able to fulfill their right to vote, to actually stand for elections. And we need international observation. We need that to happen during, beforehand, and afterwards. We have people talking about campaigns, funding campaigns, but that's just one thing. That's not that important. First and foremost, if we can hold elections, that would be a huge victory for the people of Venezuela. To be able to go into the streets and vote. And also for Venezuelans living abroad, for them to enroll and vote as well. It would be so important for them. So who will stand as candidate? Well, that's up to the coalition to decide later. We are able to do it, and we will hold these elections, and we will stand as a single candidate.
Now, would you agree to a military intervention?
We're dealing with a dictatorship here that is malicious and lacks all scruples. But we are a sovereign state, and I, as acting president of the Republic of Venezuela, will use all means at my disposal to put an end to this, to ensure a transition government and hold free elections.